Ian Gillan, you're touring and you're playing all over. You played Nova Scotia, Canada a little while ago. How's life on the road nowadays?
Oh, it's great. A lot easier than it used to be when we had 6 guys in a van with the equipment and no roadies and spending a night traveling through place to another. Yeah.
Who Cares? This album, Ian Gillan and Tony Iommi, awesome work. And where did the whole idea come into releasing this?
Well, it kind of built up, really. The idea, we were in Armenia for a meeting with the bigwigs, the president and the prime minister. They gave us an award for helping out previously, all as a result of the earthquake from 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there doing some shows with the Gillan band and went to see the devastation. So anyway, years later, I remembered a conversation I had with the mayor of Spitak when he was saying, for a year now, there's been no music. There's been no music on the radio, no music in the church, no music in the schools, and it seems like even the birds have stopped singing. But so he said, well, when you're ready for the music to start again, maybe we can do something. And so the idea of rebuilding the music school that was, like everything else, shattered by the earthquake. I mean, it's a big earthquake. It was 25,000 people killed and 250,000 people made homeless. It was one of those things that didn't get covered much on the news, but it was big. And so we decided to try and symbolically, it was more of a symbolic thing really, to rebuild the school. And so that's why we wrote a couple of songs, Tony and I. We talked about it on the plane on the way back, and wrote a couple of songs and whatever they could dig up, really, that we found. So we started rummaging around in the studios and libraries and in my shed and found a few old cassettes and bits and bobs. And so we put it together. And now with the help of not just the music people, but there's an Armenian guy down in Florida who just sold his house and given all the money to the school project, which was just what we needed. And finally, after all this time, they're putting the foundations in last week. And so we're very excited. And it should be... They're going to stop for the winter because the weather's pretty bad, but it should be up and running or finished at least construction by July. So it's exciting and fulfilling.
Must be a good feeling knowing you're doing this for the people, It's a very good thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, actually, they're doing it as much as anything else. We're just part of it. I think it's just to bring in, we're having a lot of fun doing it.
Now, when you look at the catalog on this, did you take much time into, deciding what songs should be on this? Because, I mean, you got a whole catalog of music, unreleased, etc.
Well, not really. We just decided to find out what we had that we could throw into the pot, really. And so I always thought that the Dick Pimple thing, the Deep Purple record jam that we did for a fan club convention once, it was never released, but I always thought that should get a wider audience one day, and so we managed to conclude that in it. And then a couple of things that Tony and I did together, my year from my album with Sabbath, and then we found some other stuff as I was rummaging through some boxes, and so we managed to get quite a decent amount of stuff. And I don't know, it was just fun. So we threw a load of stuff at the coordinator, which is a guy called Max Picaro at the record company in Hamburg, and I mean, he kind of knocked it into shape, really.
Another thing, too, we've seen recently in Deep Purple Subjects, Remachined, a tribute to Deep Purple's Machine Head. Now, this is an exceptional project also because we're getting, different groups presenting Deep Purple.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that, yeah. I've heard 2 or 3 tracks, yes. I don't actually have a record, but, yeah, that was interesting.
Did you happen to hear the Metallica version of When a Blind Man Cries?
Yes, I've got that, and I've got... couple of others. I can't remember what they were, but yes, I heard the Metallica version of Blind Man, yeah, sure.
What do you think of a band like Metallica, bringing their fans and introducing them, certainly the younger crowd to a Deep Purple scene, and then they can get into Deep Purple?
Well, I know the guys in Metallica. They I'm very honored that they were influenced by Deep Purple when they started, and they've always been very kind to us, and so I respect that, and I think it's great. We're just playing at the moment. I was just talking to my buddies the other day. I just can't believe what's going on. It seems incredible. I mean, we're playing to massive halls here, and 14,000 people in Moscow, 11,000 kids in St. Petersburg, and we're playing these huge arenas all around. And the most amazing thing is that the audience is like 15 years old, it's just unbelievable, which I'm absolutely loving, because the energy they're putting into it as an audience is just, it goes around in circles, so it's a wonderful thing.
Because now we're getting all these fans, listening to their parents' music and discovering those vinyls sometimes, and remastered editions, etc.
Remastered stuff is, I'm not a great fan of that. It's like everything. I used to like the original. If they start dicking around with it, it just doesn't sound quite the same to me. But I guess it's a gimmick, And also, the one thing that is important is you've got to remaster stuff when you have a different medium. So vinyl sounded great. There's no point in remastering vinyl, but when you're going to get the tapes and put it on CD, I remember how flat all the CDs sounded. I thought, my God, this is awful. In 1982, when the first CDs came out, and they were just copying everything flat. But then people had an idea to understand this was a different medium, so they had to remaster. But for the sake of it, it doesn't make much sense to me.
In that case, the people do have to go back to the actual catalog of vinyl to get the appropriate sound, which was delivered back in the day.
If you want to go back, yeah. Or come along to the live show. That's what we're about. I mean, I'm not a great collector of records, but, our thing has always been live performance. So the reason we wrote songs was so we had material to perform on stage.
Of course.
When Roger and I joined the band in '69, the band only had a few songs that would fit or suit the kind of approach we were taking, so we had to write like crazy to just give vehicles for this performances. So we just finished in Nashville now, a new record, and that's going to come out in February.
And do we have a title yet to this new album?
No.
Not yet.
We don't even have a track list yet. We recorded a bunch of songs, but I don't know what's going to be on it. We just left it. Well, we're back on the road, so I left it in the hands of the producer, so I think he'll decide what goes on it and what it sounds like and probably what it's called.
Let's say, in the eyes of Ian Gillan, what do you think of the internet as a whole now, like with Facebook and social media, reintroducing fans to that stuff?
It's very different. It depends where you're standing. It's all a question of perspective. We're not doing any new material. On the negative side, we're not performing any new material, which years ago we would have done. As soon as we'd written the songs, we'd have played them on stage. But we know perfectly well now that some really sad copy from a mobile phone will be up on YouTube
right
within minutes of completing the song, and it will just spoil it for everybody. And I just heard a new band in England sold, they had a chart record with which they had 100,000 units, of which only 9,000 were paid for. So it's probably the only chance they get to have any success, and it's a pretty sad thing. I've had a lot of correspondence on my website with kids talking about the copyright control thing and freeloading, and I think they all think I'm crazy. But I was trying to point out that it's probably too late now anyway. The industry is finished. I mean, as it was, it will never happen again. It's the end of an era, and it's really been sucked dry at the end because of the lack of income. I was a great supporter of bootlegs in the times when you could distinguish between a bootleg and a pirate. And it was all very easy then because the fans would get bootlegs and they would swap them amongst themselves. And you knew pretty much that they had all the legitimate product you'd ever issued anyway, so no one was losing out. But a couple of the kids correspondingly said, Ian, that's just the way it is now. Get used to it. And I said, well, that's the end of it, because if there's no money, there's no tape operators, there's no recording studios, there's no business, there's no promo, there's no marketing, there's no production. It's all just an illusion. And so from that, you won't get any tours, you won't get any bands that really will develop. Of course, there are loads and loads of brilliant young musicians practicing like crazy at the moment. But along with the other things that have happened, the venues, for example, have all gone in England. There's laws against any more than two people performing on a stage at the same time, unless the landlord gets a special license, which costs money. And so It's not. I'm not optimistic about the future in terms of that sort of thing. And the internet, generally speaking, is just like the Wild West. There's no control at any stage. And people talk about censorship and freedom and that sort of thing, and it's a good thing. Well, I remember when I started my website, and I had a guest book, and within weeks it was inundated with obscenity and vitriol and vile, horrible things. I mean, you can see what goes on. Mm. It's shocking to think how many people, just want to kill someone or do terrible things to them, or just write out a string of obscenities. And I didn't want to be associated with that, so I said, I'm not going to censor it. I'm just going to close it down, and I'm going to do a Q&A section instead. And all I can do is promise to answer the difficult questions. But I don't want to be involved in this kind of horrible stuff. So there's a lot of muck out there, and so I suppose until it settles down, it will be. On the positive side, this is a very long and philosophical thought, but on the positive side, we are getting back to a very great simplicity again. You got adults behaving like children, and so we're limited to the number of words we can use in a missive, and so to a certain extent, life has become very simple. I'm not really sure where it's going, but it's all tied in with the fact that, well, the population on this planet is really getting a bit scary now. And so I don't think that there's any real argument about the fact that if you just look at the projected figures for population for 50 years from now, it's going to make your knees tremble. It's really scary. And I remember writing a song 20 years ago where there was 5.7 billion people on the planet, and it's way over 6 now and heading towards 7, and it's unsustainable. This is the thing. And once people get crowded and start living on top of each other, there's no personal space, and fights break out. And so I'm thinking of, I'm writing a lot about this at the moment, and thinking that we're going to move from Homo sapiens to, Homo spiritus papilio, which is my name for the next phase of humanity. The spirit of the butterfly. Maybe we'll just get up and float away. We've got to transmutate or something. But we're moving into areas now that we used to think about when we were children, and then you grow up and you lose the ability to have that uneducated point of view. So it's quite fascinating to me. It's, as I say, it's a bit like the Wild West. You don't know where it's going, but it's certainly appealing to the lowest common denominator at the moment.
The way you're saying it, it's a PhD level of intelligence. The way you're saying that is very unique and interesting. Your points on that.
I think it's inevitable that we have to recognize the exponential rate of expansion that we've gone through, and that curve on the graph from, the long stretched out periods between Greek and Egyptian cultures, and then going through to the Renaissance, and then going through to the Industrial Revolution, the space age, and you can see that curve just rising till it's almost vertical. And so every day something. Just when I was a kid, the space age was the most advanced thing you could possibly imagine. And we now know that the computers on board those first things were smaller than the computing power you have on a handheld telephone,
Right.
And so the future it's not easy to predict, but with the benefit of some quantum thinking, it wouldn't be difficult to imagine that it's going to be in some sort of metaphysical form, which is exciting.
And that's the way the hard drives are starting to be for computers now, quantum level.
Yeah, it depends I've often thought that, Darwin often taught us about survival, but I think because he took so long to publish his book, it was because he was so scared of reaction, that I think that if he'd sat down and thought about it, he might have actually, what I call the missing last chapter, which is, I think, is probably the driving force behind humanity, is not survival, it's actually supremacy. And you can see that whether it's claiming land and food or however it was in early pioneering days or now it's more about ideology and supremacy. My way of life is better than yours, and you can see that in all aspects. So it's fascinating times. We're lucky to be alive right now to see all this happening.
That's very true. And changing subjects and going to your quality of voice, I've seen you perform live, find your voice is fascinating, and it's still delivering, just like in 1983 with, Black Sabbath, let's say. What do you think of your quality and your strength now? How are you using it?
Well, you win some, you lose some. I mean, one of my heroes was a guy called Cliff Bennett, and he was a singer, a professional, had a few hit records, was managed by Brian Epstein, who managed the Beatles, and he had a couple of hit records in England. He came from my part of London, and he was an amazing voice. And where everyone else was into rock and roll and blues, he was more into soul music and Tamla and stuff like that. And he had a big band. It was very rare to have, brass and saxophones and piano. And he had like an 8-piece band, which was with all the top musicians. And I dreamed of sounding like him and getting the top mid of my normal range with that edge. And I look back and cringe at some of the sounds I made in the 70s and 80s and in that range. And lo and behold, 20 or 30, 40 years later, I nailed it. And I'm so pleased with the top mid range now. It's fantastic. So I'm thrilled to bits. Yes, it's changed a bit. I don't do the Child in Time screams anymore. I haven't got that as a weapon anymore. But there again, I used to do pole vaulting competitively, and I can't do that anymore. So I guess it's all the same.
When you do listen to your old voice, let's say when you're younger,
which is very rare.
What did you think of that? Nowadays, do you enjoy hearing yourself, or is it like somebody that's hearing themselves on the radio and don't like it?
No, I've got to be honest. I love it when we've made a new record, and I listen to it probably 8 or 10 times to analyze it and pick out the bits that I'd missed and just absorb it thoroughly, and then I put it away and probably won't play it again for years. And I don't listen to radio much, so no, I don't hear myself very often, to be honest. I do other things when I'm not working.
Well, Ian, it's been a real pleasure talking to you about all these subjects.
Thank you very much.
Very diverse, I like it. And your career, it never ends, it seems. It's getting better and better.
Well, fingers crossed. It's really exciting. One of the great things about this new album that we've just done, which I recognized when I listened to the guys working out, because all the music and all the songs come from jam sessions, and nobody ever comes in with a song. It's not like that. And I suddenly realized when I heard some of these recordings objectively, what a finely tuned unit and how much empathy there is between the musicians. And all as a result of year in, year out playing 20, 30, 40, 48 countries last year. And, 6 cities a week, 5 cities a week, that sort of thing. It's unbelievable, the kind of the underlying cohesion that there is with the music. Everyone knows what everyone's going to do, and it's so tight. Mm-hmm. And it's become a real unit. So, the benefit of all this touring is paying off. Anyway, that's what we dreamed of when we were kids, just to be able to play every night. So, I'm very happy. I don't know what the future holds. I guess bits is going to start dropping off sooner or later. But we'll see.
100 years from now, where's the legacy of Deep Purple going to be?
Oh, I don't know. You look back at any period of music or art or literature, and you very seldom hear about the influences behind the pop stars, the Beethovens and the Mozarts and the Chopins and all that sort of thing. And you very seldom hear about the people that influenced them or taught them or gave them a leg up. You just hear about the geniuses, and I'm not sure we'll be in that category. I think we played our part, and it'll be interesting. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to be viewed, but I'm fairly certain that historians in the future will look back at the second half of the 20th century and find that in the lyrics of pop music they'll get a more accurate representation of society than they will by reading any history books or newspapers or other sort of records of the time. Because I think that going back to early days of, for example, the Kinks and the Small Faces and bands like that really started all this. And then you can almost smell it, what was going on. You can feel it, you can taste it. So I think, we're very lucky to have been part of that, because music did go through a revolution. It broke away from the strictures of the business, and we were allowed to write our own songs, which was strictly forbidden before that. You went in, you signed up, you were a pop group, and you did what you were told.
Mm-hmm.
But that all changed in the early '60s, and so I think it's been quite a ride, quite interesting. Anyway, we shall see in 100 years' time.
Guaranteed. Well, Ian, thank you for this classic interview. It's loved the subjects.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Okay, well, you have a great tour, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.